Hello and welcome back to my recording. And for this session, we will discuss about arrays and loops. So that includes the while and then for and for each loop. So first, array. So array used to store multiple values in a single variable instead of declaring separate variables for each value. So, like for example, for a list, you want a list of students, a list of employees. So these type of variables can be stored in an array so that you could easily store or probably manipulate the data inside of those array. So in C sharp, for you to declare an array is first you have to uh, uh, specify the data type. So for example, the integer, and after that, what comes after is a square bracket. So this tells that the type of variable is an array of integer. And next is the name of the array. So let for example, students, and you should assign and uh, or initialize the value for your array. So you could, like as what we've seen on the screen, you can initialize the items in an array. So this means that the array students, which is an integer, contains the value of 1, 2, and 3. Another one, like for example, a string. Let's say names is equals to new string, just like that. Oh, and you also have to specify the length of your array. So what is the size for your array? So like for example 5. So on the next line, it tells us that we have a variable of names, which is an array of string, and it has a maximum length or size to 5. So these are the ways for you to initialize or declare and initialize your array. All right. So in an array, it has its built-in properties. Like for example, the length. So this property tells us what's the maximum size of our array. So like for example, let's try to print this. So console dot write line, and let's try to run this. So as we can see, the array names has the maximum size of 5. So this property is, as what we have learned from previous programming languages, helps us determine the size of our array. Like for example, if we want to perform a for statement or a for loop, you can distinguish on when you are going to stop your loop by getting the length of your array. So if you want to assign values for array, so in an array we usually have the index or address, like for example names, and then inside the square bracket is we tell where or what is the index or address of our array. So this address tells us where we can locate a certain value. And as always, same as on Java and C, array index starts in 0. And of course, the variable name or the array names is a string, so you should assign it with a string. So like for example, John. And since the size of our array names is 5, so we could just assign 5 items. family. Four. Oh, sorry. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So major. Mark. So in this example, we have assigned values for all of the indexes of our array. So for us to locate or determine the address of the name Diane, then we should know the address, or should I say, for us to locate the name Diane, we should locate it by using the third or the index 3. So this means in the index 3 we can locate the name Diane. Alright, and as you can see, since our index starts with 0, we don't usually see the maximum, the last element is equal to the number or the size of the array. So take note again, the size of our array is 5, but the last index or address is always 4. So that means max size um, minus 1. So that's the integer, let's say max size is equals to the names minus 1. The length of an array minus 1. Or sorry, not max size but last index. So that's usually the last index. So it's always the maximum size or the length minus 2, 1. So in the future, if you want to loop or iterate your array, you should always mindful about the last index, or else you'll get an error of I forgot. Let's try. I think it's out of range. So let's try to assign an index which doesn't exist in our array, which is 5. And we'll see what will be the error. And as you can see, it's unhandled exception, and the error is index out of range exception. So that's usually the error that you'll get if you assign a certain value to an index that is or that doesn't exist, or it is out of range. So index was outside the bounds of an array, since our index is only from 0 to 4. All right. So for us to loop or to iterate our array, we can either use the while loop or the for loop, and also the for each. So the difference between the three is while will iterate or will keep on running or looping until a certain condition is met. So usually condition. So that's what I call that, the term for our while loop. While the for is it will stop until a certain step has been reached. So basically it's numerical. It steps one at a time or two at a time, and so on until it reach that certain value, and it will stop. And for the for each, it's for arrays. So for each only works for arrays, so it will keep on looping or iterating, or what are the or what is the proper words for that? So until it reaches the last array or the last element of the array. So like for example, let's say integer equals to 0. Oh sorry, integer, let's say x is equal to 0, and we'll try to loop using while. um, so let's say our while loop will iterate until the it reaches, or it is within the maximum size of the array. So let's say x is less than the last index. So as you can see, the last index of our names is minus to the size of our array. So until it reaches that element, it will stop. So of course, we have to increment our variable x so that it doesn't uh, there's a term called infinite loop. So if we didn't do that, our loop will just keep on running. So let's increment. uh, each loop will increment our variable x. So let's try that. Okay, so let's say console dot right line. So we're just gonna do some basic printing. Let's say x, oh sorry, names, and we should determine the index or the proper so since our x starts from 0, then we will use it as an index. So let's put it x here. So that means on the first loop, our name should display John, and after displaying the name, it will increment the variable x to 1. So that means our x is now equals to 1. So the next name that should display is Emily. All right, so let's do that. So let's run it, and there you go. First we have displayed. Where was this 5 coming from? Yeah, there it is. So we printed the size of our arrow first, so that's 5, and then we printed only 4 items or elements. So John, Emily, Mildred, and um, Diane. So that's not Diane, so Diane. So the reason why it didn't display the name mark is that because the loop stop until it reaches um, 3. That is because we have already subtracted the size. So let's just correct this. So instead of the last index, or maybe we could just use less than or equal. So that means from 0 to the last index, because we've used earlier less than, so that means that's the iteration only starts from 0 to 3. So this time let's correct that. Let's add an equal, and as you can see, it displayed 5 items. Mark was included. So basically that's how the while loop works. So it checks for a certain condition, and then if that condition is met, then it will, I mean the loop will stop until the condition was met. So next, let's try using for statement. So for it has 3 conditions, as you can see. So first is the initialization. let's say the range, and then the steps. So in our initialization, we determine where our loop will start. So let's create a temporary variable here called I, and let's assign the initial value to 0. So meaning we will start from the first element, 0. And the range is when will our loop will stop. So that means our loop will stop until on the last element of the array. So names that then, and what are the steps? So the steps is how many where we are going to step. I mean, how many steps are we going to take? Like on each ladder, we can step one at a time, or you can do two at a time. But in our case, let's just step by one, or we're just gonna increment the variable. So that means it will loop all of the elements in our array using the variable I, which represents our index. Alright, so let's try to display that. And as what the IDE suggested, we're just gonna take that, and it will basically display our uh, list of names. And let's run it, and obviously we have displayed our names in our array. So next is the for each. So for each basically takes an array and iterates those each of the element. So for example, let's in a for each you have to declare a temporary variable that will be assigned for each of the element. Like for example, string name in names, just like that. So that means the variable name will be stored, will be assigned by the value of the uh, element of the array for each loop. All right, so let's do that. So let's say console print right line name. So take note that the variable name is just a temporary variable that will hold each of the value or element of the array. And as you can see, it displayed the values for our array. So let's say let's try to make a little program that will um, accept a certain value for our list, or a certain names for our list. So let's try to make some cleanup so we don't do this. So let's try creating a variable, let's say integer inp or input, and equals to 0. So this variable should hold the user's input, where we can ask certain command, and these command will maybe display the list or exit our program. And let's create a while statement where our while statement will loop or run until a certain command has been um, uh, entered. Let's say the input, let's run our input until it is equals to 0. And with that, let's put this to 1 so that our program will start. Since if we're going to initialize it to 0, then it will not run, since the inp or the variable inp is already 0. All right. And also let's display a text. It should say enter command, and let's add the character new line. So this will display the following text after the string enter command. So let's say that's one should be display names, and another new line, and say two, let's say add a name and a new line, and 0, which is for exit. All right, so next is we're going to add um, a user for them to enter the command. So inp equals to console that read line. But since the our inp is an integer, and then the returned value of the read line is a string, so we should parse it or cast it into or convert it into an integer. All right, and with this our program should whenever the users enter a certain number, then it will, like for example, it will, if they enter 1, then they will the program should display the names in our array, and if 2, then we should add a name, and 0, the program should exit. So let's try that. Let's say 1, so it still displays 2, 3, 4 until we enter 0, then our program has terminated. All right, so far so good. So let's do a switch case, switch statement to a switch, and the switch should be our input, the inp. So case, let's say if case is 1, then and break it so that it won't execute uh, the next line. And let's try using for each. So for each, and then name, string name. So we should declare the variable type or the data type name in names, and then let's print them. So console that write line, and then the name. Right, so let's do that. So name and concatenate it with a new line, so don't it won't so that it won't get mixed up. All right, so we're already done with the first command, so let's try to see. So display names. Oops, and so far it did not display the names in our array. So what would be the issue? So the problem is, or the issue is, that we haven't yet assigned names in our array. So we maybe let's try to assign them first. Name is 0. So let's say John. Then display the names. Then we have here John. So maybe let's try to put a filter here that if name is null or empty, then we should not just display them. So if name is equals to empty, or name is equals to null. No, sorry, not if not equal to either null or uh, null string. All right. So if they are not empty, then we're just gonna display the names. So one, and there you have it. We have, oh sorry, um, yeah, we could just break them. Yes, we could just do some or break the loop. So let's just not continue displaying the, or I mean, let's not continue executing the loop since it already reached a certain item where it doesn't have a value or a string. All right. So let's say one, and then as you can see, it only displayed the name John, and it stopped. So break is basically stops a certain line. In our case, it stops the for each, and on this line it stops the switch. All right, so next, for the case 2, let's so obviously we have to assign a certain value for our uh, element. So break and then break, and then let's ask for a name. So console, so enter a name. All right, and the okay, so let's say let's create a string here. So string entered name. All right, so entered name is equals to console that read line, and we should assign it into a element. So maybe in our program, let's assign this value to an element which is empty. So we will use for statement and create a temporary variable I, and then it should be between 0 to the last element of our array. So names that length, and we should just step it one at a time. Then let's say if, so I'm just gonna copy this. So if it's not empty, then let's sorry, so it should be our names here, names, and then the current element. As you can see, the variable I represents the current element. So names I, if the current element is not empty or null, then let's give it, assign it with a um, value. All right, so all right, so obviously we need to break the loop here once we are done assigning a name for our element. So entered name. All right. Okay, so let's run it. So first, let's display our element. So John is there, and let's say let's enter the command to add a name. So let's say, so enter the name. So Michael, and let's display the names. Let's see if it's there. And so it seems that the the first element has been overwritten. So let's try to check our code here. So first, the current element here. So obviously, all right. So let's see here. The name should be here, and then oh, sorry. Sorry. So it seems that we have we did use a different condition. So before we if the item is not empty, then let's overwrite that. So that's what happened. So this time, if the current element is empty, then let's assign it a name. All right, so let's run it again. So display name, so we have here John, and let's add another name, so let's say Michael, and display it again. Oops, and it's the same. Okay, so it seems that the when we try to display the elements or the items, the it breaks this line will stop immediately if we have displayed the first item or element. So the fix for this is to move this on an else statement, and we break the loop. So whenever so as long as the the name or the current element is not empty, then we will continue displaying the item. So like for example, so let's say to display, let's add a name. I displayed it, and there you go. We have successfully added the next name. So let's try to add another one. Let's say Michael, and then display the names, and there you have it. uh, all the names has been added. So I think the next thing that we need to fix is this new line. So it's kind of added an extra line here. So let's try it again. So display names, so John, and let's add a name. Let's say Michael. Add a name again. Let's say Diane, and let's display the names, and there you have it. The John, Michael, and Diane has been displayed. All right. So far, that's uh, um, the little program that we have created. So next is the exit. So to make this shorter, let's okay. So let's try it again. So display and exit, and there you have it. We have terminated our program since we have added the command 0. So in our while loop, um, we have tell our program that if the user enters the number 0, then it will stop the loop. So maybe you can add it yourself here. Maybe you can search a name or delete a name. Then you can obviously do that. So for now, I'll just gonna leave it to you to explore and maybe try to experiment on your own. So thank you for watching, and hopefully you have a great day and stay safe.